That's a bad man.
He is a bad, bad man.
You're a bad man. You're a very bad man.
But in the end, you have saved face because you have recognized officially who the baddest man happens to be. Now you go ahead and use
Can I get an amen?
Welcome to the 5th edition of the Bad Men Basketball Podcast. I'm Mark, and I'm here with Michael today.
How's it going, guys?
So, there were all these rumors about Phil Jackson going to the Knicks, and everybody thought they were ridiculous, and they were kind of laughed at. But this time it sort of turned out to be true, I guess, because it looks like he's close to landing the job in the front office. Do you think that this might change the culture or entice Melo to stay? What does this mean for Knicks basketball? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think anytime you can move Phil Jackson into some kind of, obviously anything related to, position of power for your team, you're probably going to have, do a little better in whatever area that is. So as far as how that affects them, and especially with regards to Melo, though, I believe he came out today, and what do you say? He said something about, it's not going to change anything as far as what he's going to do.
That's PR. I don't believe that for a second. I think Phil Jackson, if Melo has any intentions of staying or any sort of lingering feelings like he wants to stay, Phil Jackson could be a real. Just the name. It just like what the Knicks really need right now is some hope because they don't have draft picks and they have all these terrible contracts. And Phil Jackson kind of supplies that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And he's been thrown around like his title is kind of in question right now. But I've heard things that have said that he might be president of basketball operations. Which, if that's the case, I think that it could be huge in Melo's decision to stay.
Yeah, think about it. Like, what's Melo really going to say? Is he going to all of a sudden just come out and say, "Oh yeah, if we get Phil, then I'm definitely staying"? Like, he's not going to say that.
Yeah.
So I don't think if they asked him about it, he's probably just going to. I think what he said was a reasonable thing that doesn't really hint at what he's actually going to do.
Yeah.
But in reality, though, you have to think if he knows Phil is involved with that team, that's enticing. It's got to be enticing for a player. Think about everything Phil is associated with. Every star player that's been on Phil's side in his coaching career did pretty amazing things. Granted, that had to do a lot with their own talent, and not just Phil. But I think Melo it'd be a kind of sense of security for Melo to know that he's playing with Phil now, or under Phil, or in some capacity. So I think in reality, I think it would help strengthen the case for him to stay in New York. I don't know how it wouldn't. And then beyond that, it's like it would be a little embarrassing if he still ended up leaving. And I don't think it is. I think it's still probably likely that he will split and need all the reason in the world too. And the thing with Melo is people when he's not a superstar and he's not going to be remembered as one of the top players of our generation, but he's still an excellent offensive player, arguably top 3 or 4 in the league. And he just needs more help from the other guys, and that's not to say that he's bad or cancerous, although he does kind of hog the ball a little bit. But if you put him in the right situation, he could be deadly. And I think that he might not be able to lead a team to a championship, but he could play a big role. And if he does choose to stay in New York, I'm sure Phil Jackson would. Depending on what role he took, if he takes more of a consultant's role
that might mean less. But if he takes over basketball operations, even as an unproven commodity, for the greatest coach of all time, arguably, to come in and run the laughing stock of the NBA, you have to, if you want to stay, that's a reason to do it. But I don't think that I still wouldn't say Melo's more likely to stay than he is to leave.
Yeah, I have a hard time reading him about the whole thing, but I feel like, I don't know, it's like he's got all the reasons in the world to leave, and I mean, it's two sides of it. Like, why would you want to stay on that team as it is right now, honestly,
right.
at his age, and if, you know, you start questioning how much does he really want to win a championship versus how much does he want, I guess, the money. I guess the money is the main argument for New York.
Right. Uh-huh.
And some people say, oh, well, it's New York City and stuff like that. But I don't know. I have a hard time seeing him not leaving.
Yeah.
So that's. But and the thing is, from New York's perspective, if he does, let's say he leaves, or they trade him or whatever, then I think, you know, let's say they get Phil as well. That's not a bad situation for them, honestly, if they lose Melo and they can kind of start the rebuild with Phil and kind of do like a clean slate kind of thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I don't know, it's if I were a Knicks fan, that would almost be the most appealing situation. You can kind of shed the Melo era and bring in the Phil era at the same time.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, because the Knicks need a rebuild. Even if Melo's going to be a part of it, their roster needs some drastic change.
They and more than any other team, I think they need to blow it up. Like, I think, in the sense that, like, that's the mess. Like, it's an ugly mess, and the only thing you can do to fix it is to blow it up. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. I feel like.
Yeah, because they have so much cap space being eaten up. I mean, it is tough.
Yeah, it'll be tough to blow it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that if you're Melo, sort of the legend that surrounds Phil Jackson might have you thinking, oh, he's going to pull the cheat codes out and just like bring in. But other than that, I'm not sure that it would have too much of an effect. But yeah. What's that?
I was just saying that, like, it's hard to see it being the thing that pushes it over the edge, right? I mean, let's say he's deep down inside, he's set on leaving. Is this going to be the thing that changes his mind? Probably not, right? Probably not.
Yeah.
But if he's maybe he's more on the fence on it than we think he is.
Right.
Maybe that could be like the thing that kind of
nudges him over.
Maybe it could nudge him over that line.
Okay. So yeah. All right. So next question, or next little portion that we're doing here. So Durant and LeBron, two best players in the league. Not even question. We're not going to talk about that. Clearly one of them is going to win the MVP. But we're going to discuss who's that third guy. So I think the first thing that you really have to define, what's an MVP? It's not the best player in the league, or else Derrick Rose wouldn't have been able to set his sights even close to one in 2011. I'm not even sure that I would call him a top 5 player that year. Right. But story plays a big part of it. Exceeding expectations plays a big part of it, and runs towards the end of the season played a big part of it. I mean, there's a reason that, like, if Fruitvale Station wasn't nominated for an Oscar, I mean, it came out in March or April. I mean, like, people aren't supposed to judge what's freshest in their memory over something that happened maybe earlier. But it's human nature, and that's what these voters are, and they can't really help it. So, I think that right now, the guy that's most present in people's minds, despite their record, would probably be Joakim Noah, and he's really come out as probably his top. He's come out as like a top 2 or 3 center in the league, and really done some unbelievable things as of late.
Yeah, I think as far as, since MVP, there is this aspect of the MVP award that, really draws on recent trends. And with regards to recent trends, Noah he's definitely, he's up in that top 5 MVP level. I mean, if you want to go really recent, he's been playing better than, arguably a bit better than maybe even LeBron has in the past few weeks. If you really take into account what he's doing overall.
Well, if you take these past few weeks, LeBron can't hit a jump shot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, it counts for something, I think. I mean, but of course, like you're saying, I mean, it's tough to define the MVP credentials, I guess, in order to really be like a thorough candidate for it. Like LeBron and Durant are obviously, they've got the whole package. Either one of those guys, if the other one didn't exist, the other guy would be the clear MVP every season or at least,
But as LeBron has been, sort of. I mean, this is the first year
Right.
Durant's really pushed him and made an argument to put him at the number 1 spot.
Right. And it's like, I think with, both of them, they've kind of, they're on, you would say that they're on the same level, I think, and then there's beyond that, there's guys that should be, we should definitely be recognizing them. What's kind of funny to me is that, like, saying someone's a top 5 MVP candidate, it's almost, I mean, when they're not really actually a candidate, in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, none of these guys have any. We're not saying that these guys have any chance at winning.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can still kind of qualify and like which ones, you could still. There is such thing as a top 5 MVP candidate. And that's what's interesting about the award is there's a lot to it that it's a little vague, I guess, in terms of what defines it. So
yeah, I mean there will always be an argument over it because everyone has a different definition.
Yeah, which kind of makes it fun. That's what makes it fun.
Oh,
I think.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
It'd be kind of boring if it was like, oh, who's the best player? Oh, it's LeBron. Okay, every year it's gonna be LeBron. That's not the same.
Although it would fix some of those like Karl Malone winning over Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Which never should have happened, or Derrick Rose, which honestly never should have happened, or I might get crucified for this, but Kobe Bryant in 2008, I don't think. I think
that was
Chris
LeBron's.
Paul was pretty clearly the best player of that league, player that year, and it kind of came down to that last game. I don't know if you remember. They had 2 similar records, but Kobe had a much better team, and Chris Paul was really like the maestro of that Hornets team. And it came down to that last game, and the Lakers were better, and the Lakers won. So Kobe took it home, and it felt a little bit like a lifetime achievement award.
Yeah. I mean, I almost think those kind of things, like with Rose and Malone, and it's almost, I mean, it's the unfortunate side effect of the MVP award, I suppose. And I guess it's kind of a necessary casualty of. All right,
hey, we might get some flack for saying that Rose thing. Who would you have taken over him for MVP that year? Why do you think that Rose didn't deserve that year? If that's what you're saying, which is what I'm saying, but I don't know if you're agreeing in here. Yeah,
well, I mean, I'm not one of those people who thinks like, oh, it's a shame that he won it or whatever and that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, I think that was the season that Dwight was actually up
It was
there.
so clearly Dwight Howard. It was so clearly Dwight Howard.
And then you still had, LeBron doing his thing, which is...
Yeah, I wouldn't have given it to him that year. He sort of let the pressure get to him a little bit, especially that year. I mean, you saw that manifest in the finals, especially. But he kind of, like, there was that lingering conversation the entire year, like, that he can't hit a jump shot. And it was sort of the first time that I'd really seen him rattled.
Yeah.
And, I don't think that he had the best season that year. And
Probably not.
I'm not even sure if he was the best, if he played like the best player in the league that year.
And you know what's crazy with that year is that it was a landslide in favor of Rose in terms of first place votes. I mean, 113 first place votes for Rose, and then you have 3 for Dwight, 4 for LeBron, 1 for Kobe. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's kind of interesting how that it's almost like, is that the momentum of the narrative that comes in? Like it's just
I think so.
Well, yeah, that
I
has
think
to
so.
be.
And that's a big part of the award, though. But getting back on topic, let's talk about Blake Griffin. Let's talk about Blake Griffin. Yeah, what do you think about him?
If I had
as a third guy,
right? I think he could be that third guy right now, which is funny, being that CP3 might have been that third guy earlier in the year, or he might have even been. I think people were actually saying CP3 as like a legitimate MVP candidate, as in like
until he went
LeBron
down.
And Durant, until he went down, and then Durant, came on and all that, so that the course of the season changed. But that's what is funny is that you have two players on that team that have been top 3 MVP candidates.
Yeah.
And right now, Blake is, I think, especially considering CP3 was out for so long, it's now Blake's in the driver's seat as far as that goes. And yeah, I mean, the way he's played without Chris Paul and then with Chris Paul as well, I think he actually started coming on really strong. I think before, it wasn't like there was a total switch flipped when CP3 went out. Blake was playing at a higher level before that too, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he's really stepped it up this season. But when Chris Paul went out, everyone was thinking, oh, are the Clippers going to fall to the 6th, 7th, 8th seed in the playoff run, which is a testament to how tough the West is. But it's also, it was also really undervaluing him at the time. And I'm a huge Blake fan, so let me just get that out of the way now. But Chris Paul and Blake Griffin were never and are not now a hand in glove fit. I mean, they're terrific players, each of them. But Vinny Del Negro and sort of Doc Rivers at the beginning of the season, they tried to turn Blake Griffin into a pick and pop player, which Chris Paul is great at. That's not Blake's game. That's not Blake's game at all. He creates off the perimeter. And, I mean, I said this in one of the previous podcasts. He almost has the game of a small forward, and that he does most of his damage off the dribble. And, I mean, he's developed a really effective post-game, but I want him with the ball in his hands, making plays away from the basket for a good portion of the game. And I think that Chris Paul going out showed people how effective he was at doing that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the opportunity came in and he seized all of it and then some.
Seized the day.
Yeah. So I mean, like he was in that situation where it's like that was almost like a fork in the road kind of for him, where he was either gonna kind of fall off on people's and as far as the public perception goes, where he was still had the critics on his case as far as being
right.
All you can do is dunk and all that nonsense, which at the time was really silly, and now it's just become a total joke if anyone actually thinks that. Still.
Yeah, I mean, people maybe if time travel had been invented, I don't think anybody is saying that today.
Yeah,
that'd be definitely a rewind. Is there anybody else that you had in mind?
Well, yeah, you got Blake for sure. And Noah. I think you might want to say that Noah is kind of a hot topic or flavor of the month or whatever. But
he's trending right now. But he is
that said,
incredible.
He's playing at that level. You can't deny it, and especially considering the defense, which is something that he is better at than any other MVP candidate. I mean,
and especially considering how undervalued he's been his entire career. Like this is really refreshing. I think that a guy who deserves these props is finally getting them, because he was, you always saw, even with Derrick Rose out, the Bulls would get to the second round and they'd get to the playoffs, and they'd always be written off, and there was always that one constant, and that was always Joakim Noah and Tom Thibodeau. But Tom Thibodeau would always get the credit.
Yeah, and I think another factor is actually that as far as that went, you also had Luol Deng, who was kind of he was almost like right there with Noah in that kind of sense, where he brought it every night.
I wouldn't put him in the same. I wouldn't put him in the same I don't think. I mean, he was great and he was really effective. And Jimmy Buckets, we also have to talk about him. Last year at least.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him on Noah's level, but I guess he's kind of in the same boat in terms of how he kind of epitomized the Bulls.
But I wouldn't put Luol Deng on Noah's level either last year, because Noah. So I would say when he had some good guys around him, but you put a mediocre center on that team, and they're fighting for the worst record in the league.
Yeah, they'll be much worse. And you also have to other thing you have to look at is the health that Noah struggled with for a while, and that's probably as big as anything for him. Right. Is that he's healthy. He's healthier than he's maybe ever been, because he's always had a lot of little things going on, and it's it gets compounded when he's one of those guys that will play through injury and play big minutes every night, and now he's that's not an issue right now. So you're seeing Noah at with full steam, and it's something that I think we kind of forgot was actually a thing. Like we didn't. Yeah. People kind of forgot how good he was when he was healthy, and now he's doing that, and he's on another level. So I think as far as complete package goes, as far as value, if we're talking most valuable player in the most literal sense, he's right up there with any of those guys.
So Noah and Blake, is anybody else that comes to mind?
Let's see. After those guys, if you look through each team, it just doesn't really. Not every team has an MVP candidate, even if they're a great team. The Spurs don't have it. They're a little too evenly spread throughout their roster. You might even. Portland kind of had the Aldridge thing going for a while. He's just not good enough. He's not quite there.
He's not talented enough.
And then
player.
Portland's cooled off a little bit too, so that's kind of affected that.
And Paul George has been slumping. We talked about that last podcast.
Yeah, so there's a few guys that have kind of fallen off the radar a little bit, like George and Aldridge. So,
the only guys that we haven't really talked about are James Harden and Dwight Howard. But being on the same team, I feel like they sort of offset each other in maybe the voters' mind, because they've both been playing out of their minds recently. They're going to get votes. I think really well.
Yeah, they should both get votes. They're obviously not going to get first place votes, but they should both get recognition. I mean, especially Dwight. I think Dwight's been a little more consistent this year. I think Harden's kind of just now coming on. Yeah. But if Harden keeps this up, he's going to get some votes, and he deserves it for sure.
Definitely.
And Houston's playing great. Somebody's got to get that kind of recognition.
Yeah.
So other than that, you just got guys that are on teams that maybe aren't quite good enough. Like Chicago, Noah's great, but they're not a good enough team. Dragic for a while looked good, but Phoenix isn't a good enough team to really make a serious case. So it's LeBron and Durant, and then it's everybody else. Which that's just how it's going to be.
Right. All right. So we've got the mailbag segment now. So we're taking questions first from D3, who's actually the graphic designer for our site. So thank you for that. But anyway, he asks, what do you think will happen to the Heat after this year? Will the Big Three re-sign? Does it depend on them winning the championship this year? I mean, it definitely it depends on winning the championship this year. I would say probably more for Chris Bosh than the others. I think Dwayne Wade is kind of a made man in Miami. I don't think he's going anywhere. And LeBron James, you sort of have to think, does he want to go through what he went through leaving Cleveland again? I mean, it wouldn't be the same.
I don't think he's going to do it. I don't think he's going to leave, even if they lose to Indiana and it gets a little ugly. I don't think he's going to leave that team. I think that would just kind of. I think he's happy there. He's okay with that's his home now, and I don't think there isn't enough to think that Miami is not going to be competitive enough, and there isn't really a better option for him anywhere. I mean, people were talking. It's crazy to me that people are talking about LeBron going to LA next season. It's just what the hell?
Don't break my heart. Don't break my heart here. Yeah, I don't think it'll happen either.
Yeah,
and we're talking about the Clippers, not the Lakers. So
yeah. Well, I mean, people even think he's going to go to the Lakers. It's
Lakers is going to happen. So sorry.
So I think in general with the Heat, I lean toward them kind of staying put. Definitely LeBron, and if LeBron stays put, they're going to be okay. And
Yeah.
I think, but they have kind of that whole top to bottom, like, upper tier level of, as an organization, kind of akin to San Antonio, how they've been for a while, in the sense that they've got, they've got the front office, they've got the coaching, they've got the veterans, they've got the superstars. I mean, they've got it set up. They obviously have to retool in order to kind of handle the future. So, I mean, like, I don't know, speaking selfishly, I wouldn't mind seeing Bosch go somewhere else, just because I would like to see him in a bigger role. Although I
think
the way
that's likely. I think that maybe if they don't win the championship, I think I could easily see Bosch going somewhere else. And if you know what, I'm not gonna pretend to know the name. I'm forgetting the name of the Cleveland GM, but if he can clean it up, that's the only place that I could see LeBron going. Not to say that it's likely now because they're a mess. But as far as, because he does care about what people think about him, and he doesn't want to be thought of as a ring chaser. And so, I mean, if he's going to leave, I think that if they can set Cleveland up with some nice, if they were to get the number 1 pick this year and land like Embiid, Tristan Thompson, Anthony Bennett's kind of come into his own a little bit as the season's progressed, and then you have LeBron there. Maybe bring in, I don't know the numbers, but if they could bring in maybe another marquee free agent, or trade the piece that they had for like a Kevin Love, I could see him going there and really only there.
Yeah, and Cleveland's situation isn't as bleak as it seems, because they actually do still have some nice assets. And
they have so many. Yeah, I mean they have all these guys who are kind of lost causes. I just did air quotes. I don't know why. I think you guys can see that. But point is, they're not lost causes. Dion Waiters still has a lot of talent. Tristan Thompson, very talented. Anthony Bennett has lost weight and gotten healthy, and we're starting to see what he can do too. And it's a lot about becoming accustomed to playing in the NBA. And we all knew he was a project too. So.
Right. I do think the problem there, though, with LeBron going to Cleveland is, although they do have potential and they have, they have some avenues into potential, success, I think there's still, A, there's a lot of work to be done there, but B, most importantly, I think they haven't really indicated a lot that they're actually going to be able to put together a great team as far as their history in the front office and how they've been recently. Yeah. So I think for LeBron, that's just kind of... It's kind of like a shot in the dark, hoping that things will work out there.
And I think LeBron has stated that he's not going to go somewhere that it's cold. But you say this or that. Like until you get there, I'm not going to be taking your word for it. Yeah. All right. So next question. We touched on this a little bit in one of the past podcasts. So we're going to do this pretty quickly. But out of Chicago or the Clippers, so we didn't discuss the Clippers, and I'm always ready to jump on that because that's my team. Out of Chicago or the Clippers, which is the best fit and most ready to contend with Melo, which is asked by LeBron James, 23 MVP. Thoughts?
Yeah, this is I think the Bulls. I mean, they seem to have in theory, a decent fitting team around him. They have a great defense, which means that they at least can cover if he doesn't want to have to carry all that weight, or rather, if he needs to carry all the weight offensively, he can save energy on defense. They can probably cover him up there as long as they don't play him at power forward, which I don't think they would. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of those teams that could actually do a decent job of handling Melo's flaws as a player. Even like Chicago's style, obviously, is defense first by far, but offensively, they kind of have that approach where they seem to they slow the game down so much that it's all about getting tough shots.
Yeah. And
shots that players wouldn't normally want to take or probably shouldn't take. I think that's kind of maybe what Melo is best at is those tough shots, like tough mid-range jumpers and the post-up shots that for a lot of players aren't very efficient, but he's quite good at. So
he kind of goes up and down, but yeah, this year he's been
good.
This year he's been really good. Great.
And so I think there's potential there. Like it's easy for me to imagine it working out really well.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you look at everything that's happened in the past with Melo and him going to new teams, and little chemistry turbulence that seems to happen every time. And I think how good could they be? I guess it kind of depends on how much they have to give up to get Melo, because there's a lot going on there as far as how they'd fit him in financially. They'd have to lose some of the key pieces that they have now that make them as good as they are. Like Taj Gibson perhaps, or maybe even Jimmy Butler, or a handful of players that are doing good things for them right now. So that's the one thing that kind of makes that whole scenario not quite as nice sounding as it might seem, is that the team that he would go into in Chicago wouldn't be the team that you see right now. They can't just plug him in there without losing anybody.
Yeah, let me just say this. There's no chance that Melo is going to the Clippers. The only real way that would happen is if they trade Blake for Melo, and no chance.
No way.
Never going to happen. Especially
it wasn't going to happen. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen before Blake did all that this season.
Right.
So it's not going to happen now.
It's not going to happen now. But if you think, what team would be better just placing Melo on there right now? I mean, it's the Clippers. Just because we don't know,
they're the better team.
Just because they're the better team, and we don't know if Rose is coming back, I think that he's the better fit for Chicago, and he fills more holes there. But he needs an elite point guard to help him to manage the ball for him, because sometimes his usage percentage can kind of skyrocket and go out of control. And his best season was with Chauncey Billups, who has been accused by some of being a bit of a ball hog himself.
And he played great on the Olympic team, which was obviously a team where he didn't have to handle the ball as much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you stick him with Chris Paul. That's a good matchup. The thing is, and he's going to provide about as much defense. First off, Carmelo Anthony is not a good defensive player. But
he's not bad, but he's not. He's definitely. I don't think he's really a positive for your team.
He's not what we need. He's not what we need there. But he'd probably be a step up from what we have right now. We don't have anyone to really defend big guys on the wing, but he'd also kind of clog it up a little bit for Blake, because what we did, a huge need of ours before, was to have that guy who could create on the wings, and Blake has sort of emerged and come into to being that player and being sort of like a top 10 guy. So I don't think Melo wouldn't work there. I think he might fit. I mean, he would absolutely fit in Chicago. I think that's a pretty perfect place for him for all the reasons you listed too.
I don't know. I see where you're coming from, because if I were a Clippers fan, I would kind of be the idea of Melo coming in, not even just to replace Blake, because that would just be a nightmare. But
let me be honest. At the very beginning of the season, I would have done that trade. I would have traded Melo for Blake. And that might be Blake is my favorite player in the league, but it's clear. I mean, Chris Paul is a top 3 guy. And they didn't fit, and I think Chris Paul and Melo would have fit pretty perfectly. But Blake has emerged and come out so strongly, I don't think you can do that.
Yeah,
I mean, no chance you can do that. Let me say that very clearly and strongly.
Yeah.
Melo for Blake will never happen on the side of the LA Clippers.
Yep, not happening. And it is kind of a thing where, as far as the fit goes, CP3 and Melo is an interesting duo for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's like, in theory, it would kind of temper a lot of Melo's, like you said, usage issues and just kind of generally being a bit too ball dominant and taking his teammates out of the game. Because CP3 is obviously very good at involving teammates, which is the kind of would obviously offset what Melo does. So that's a nice thought. But I think in practice, on the flip side of Chicago, they don't have that kind of point guard, but they also don't really need that kind of point guard because the way they play, it's just kind of like
seamless.
They just got to get it done. They play ugly on offense,
right?
And that's just
and Melo could help that out a lot.
Yeah, I think Melo is a guy who can score as well as anybody in an ugly offense. I mean, look what the Knicks are doing right now.
Right. Yeah, really.
It's as ugly as it gets, and he's still putting up 40 points.
Yeah.
And on decent efficiency. So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. For Bulls fans' sake, I think they're getting a little too excited about the idea of Melo being in Chicago, but I almost wouldn't mind seeing that. I think it'd be interesting. It'd be an interesting team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so last question here. You're going to try to keep this to just a few words. Anthony Davis turned 21 yesterday. Discuss his ceiling. So, what do you think? Oh, and this is from the Bears. So, where would you place him?
Yeah, his ceiling is probably out of sight. It's so high right now. It's just it's absurd, and it just seems obviously, he's 21. We know how young he is now. I mean, we're slowly still coming to terms with that, though. I think it's like we still don't fully understand just how young and amazing he is. But I mean, what can't he do, I guess, is the question. I mean, he can shoot it. He's actually just recently, I should probably look this up, but he's had some I think multiple assist games recently. He had a 6-assist game, or rather a 5-assist game, and he's averaged a few assists recently, which is a big jump up for him from before. I mean, so if that's obviously one of the obvious next steps for him is maybe to get some playmaking going. I mean, if he gets good at passing on a double teams and all that,
absolutely,
it's just like it's infinite almost. I mean, it's crazy. I think it's hard to give this guy like such a lofty expectations, but I think he's got potential to be one of the best players of all time for sure. I mean,
absolutely.
Why not?
And you really said everything that needs to be said. But I will add this: Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward of all time, and there's not really much discussion there.
If you consider him a power forward, but
if you consider him a power forward, I for this statement here, he's a power forward.
Mm-hmm.
I would call him, and I know this is higher than most people would put him. I'd call him the third greatest player of all time, for a few reasons. Do you have any qualms with that? Do you want me to explain that?
Yeah, well, I'm similarly high on Duncan as far as where he fits overall, and obviously the crazy thing is he could win another ring this year, and if he does that, then it's like then people won't. Did he got there at all?
Did he got there at all and took the chance to 7 and almost won? Had it not been for this miracle,
it would have been. That's he's aging is maybe. Has anyone ever aged quite like Tim Duncan? I'm not sure. I mean, Dirk's doing it.
Yeah, that's exactly the name that So Tim Duncan is, in my opinion, the third greatest player of all time, behind Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
He's up there. I would say he's top 10 all time without thinking. Exactly
I don't think that anybody would argue that. But
yeah.
So in my top 3, I think Anthony Davis has a shot to be the greatest power forward of all time if he continues and gets better the way that I think he could.
Okay, so you're saying, that means even more coming from you because of how highly you think of Tim Duncan?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Davis has skills that Duncan didn't have, and obviously he's also not as good as Duncan was when he was young.
But he has so much room for growth. I mean, he's grown literally. I mean, he's actually grown by height so much since he was like 15, 16. Going from a point guard to a power forward, and he's put on some weight and has gotten a lot stronger.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's going to really ever be a big guy. I think you might. We'll see how it turns out.
But he's not like Nerlens Noel. He's not like Nerlens Noel because he has a tiny frame. Anthony Davis has some big shoulders.
Yeah, he does.
So it's not. So he has. He could, and he's gotten. It looks like he's hitting the gym. So I think his ceiling, like you said, limitless.
Yeah, and I think I would easily agree with you if you were to throw out Tim Duncan as a power forward. Let's say Tim Duncan's a center. In that case, I could very easily see Davis becoming the best power forward, because then you're looking at, guys like Barkley and
I'd call
Malone.
Dirk. I'd have Dirk number 2.
Yeah, Dirk's up there, and Davis obviously, just because of
he's a more complete player, but he, all of these players have their strength. I mean, we're talking about the greatest players of all time. That's a tough list to crack.
It is, and he has a lot to do before he even can realistically be even close to that conversation. But he's got the tools, the all-around tools.
Of course, yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of we'll see how it goes. I guess the one thing we gotta see is how is this team going to be? I mean, you look at Duncan; he was on the incredible team outside of him, and so that's the one thing.
Yeah, the Pelicans are not any kind of a great organization, so we'll see that too.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for listening. We'll be with you next week.